Hello and welcome back to Abyssin. Today we're diving into the story of an experienced explorer who, back in 1995, entered a remote cave deep in the Arizona wilderness all alone. He knew the cave. He had been there before. But something about that visit spiraled out of control. What began as yet another adventure quickly turned into one of the most haunting disappearances in the history of modern cave exploration. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder that only 1% of people who watch my videos are subscribed. So if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps me out. Now let's get into the story. Thomas Edward Benning, a man who lived for adventure, decided to explore Black Cave, located in the state of Arizona on a calm April day in 1995. This wasn't his first time in that cave. He had explored it before, which gave him a sense of confidence, but this time, he decided to go alone. He didn't bring a helmet, just a miner's flashlight and trust in his own sense of direction. Not exactly the safest plan, but it had worked before. As you'll notice, this is a common theme in the stories I share here. Overconfidence often plays a major role in these tragedies. Honestly, the bare minimum for entering a cave should include safety gear and never going alone. As soon as he entered, he reached the main chamber, a wider area he already knew well. But instead of following his usual path, something pulled him toward a side tunnel. It was a less obvious route, narrower, darker, and barely explored. After about an hour of crawling and climbing through rocks and tight spaces, Thomas realized he was lost. It felt like the cave had swallowed him whole. He tried to retrace his steps to find familiar landmarks, but nothing looked the same. It was a maze beneath the earth. And to make matters worse, his flashlight began flickering. Inside that cave, time stopped making sense. Hours felt like days, and it was impossible to tell how long he had been crawling through the dark. His heart pounded. Without light, finding a way out would be nearly impossible. A short while later, the flashlight died completely, plunging him into absolute darkness, several hundred feet underground. He was alone, with no source of light. Every breath echoed off the walls, as if the cave itself was listening. The air was thick and heavy, damp with moisture, and a faint metallic scent. The silence was so complete that he could hear the rapid thumping of his own heart. With a last bit of hope, Thomas lit a match. The flame was weak, but for a moment it lit up the surrounding rock. That brief flicker sparked a little hope. He kept lighting match after match, trying to move forward using those tiny bursts of light. But the matches didn't last forever. When the last one burned out, he was once again consumed by pitch blackness. Still, he didn't stop. He crawled forward, feeling the walls, desperate for any sign of an exit. To avoid going in circles, he started leaving things behind. His shoes, a torn plastic bag, even pieces of clothing to mark the path he had taken. As more time passed, his throat burned with thirst. Swallowing became painful, like glass scraping down his throat. His vision blurred and his muscles began to shake, not from the cold, but from complete exhaustion. Worn out, starving, and dehydrated, he eventually came across a narrow crack in the rock. The small space, just about 4 feet deep, looked like it might lead somewhere. Maybe it opened into a larger area. Maybe it was a way out. That flicker of hope was enough. Thomas carefully lowered himself in, pressing his foot against a ledge for balance. But as his hips passed through the narrowest part, he realized his mistake. He was stuck. The rough walls squeezed in from both sides. He tried to move, to push himself back up, but it was no use. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. He fought with the last strength he had, trying to use his arms to lift himself, but they were too weak after hours of strain. His fingernails scraped uselessly against the rock. His legs were trapped, his entire body pinned down by the very cave he once admired. And even if he screamed for help, his voice barely carried through that deep, silent void. Minutes turned into hours turned into days. No one knew exactly where he had gone. Thomas hadn't told anyone which cave he planned to visit. His wife became worried when he didn't come home. She called the police, who began searching every cave he was known to explore, but there were no signs. It took days just to find his car, parked not far from the entrance to Black Cave. Rescue teams entered the cave, but since they didn't know the hidden passages, they only searched the mapped areas. Near the entrance, they found a few of Thomas's belongings, including a t-shirt and a pair of sunglasses. but they overlooked the narrow side tunnel he had chosen. They combed through every known route and found nothing. Days turned into weeks. Eventually, the search was called off. Officially, Thomas Edward Benning was listed as missing. His wife didn't give up. She put up flyers, made public pleas, reached out to anyone who might know something, but the response was always the same. The search was over. All that remained were memories and unanswered questions about what had happened to him in that underground world. It wasn't until December 1996, more than a year and a half later, that the mystery began to unravel. 3 cavers, Bill Graff, Elizabeth Robb, and Dale Green, entered Black Cave. They were doing a mapping project and decided to explore that very side passage, the same one Thomas had taken. About an hour in, they found something strange, a half-burned box of matches on the floor. A bit farther in, they saw a broken miner's flashlight. Then more signs appeared. Burnt matches, torn pieces of clothing. It looked like someone had left a trail there long ago. At first, they didn't think much of it, but as they made their way back later that day, curiosity got the better of them. They decided to look deeper into the side tunnel where the objects had been found. It was narrow, less than 3 feet wide, and sloped into an even tighter space. Crawling through, Rob came across a shoe, then a sock, then something unusual on the ground. At first glance, it looked like a pile of animal fur, but as they got closer, they realized what it really was, something far more disturbing. They froze in place. It was the body of Thomas Edward Benning. They had heard about his disappearance months earlier, but never imagined he had been there the whole time. They took photos of the scene and collected the keys they found on him for identification. Looking closer, they noticed deep scratches on the rock, evidence of a desperate fight to break free. Before leaving, they placed reflective markers to guide others to the site. They immediately notified the sheriff. Days later, a specialized recovery team was sent in, this time with experts in navigating tight spaces. After multiple attempts, they managed to retrieve Thomas's body. The wallet still in his pocket confirmed his identity. Thomas had been trapped in that cave for nearly 20 months. A place he had explored many times before ended up becoming his grave. If only the first rescuers had known the cave's secrets. If only experienced cavers had been brought in sooner, maybe Thomas would still be alive. But Black Cave kept its secret buried in the darkness for far too long. If you enjoyed this story, check out the video currently on your screen for another cave exploration that went horribly wrong. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.